Well, Red, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to delve into a really hot topic that's been on everybody's mind on X in the comic fandom world. Who created the cinematic Deadpool? You might say Rob Liefeld, which is instinctively the correct response. But some people would disagree and say that no, Joe Kelly's take might be more reflective of the character we know and love from the cinematic universe. That representation, of course, presented by Ryan Reynolds, very strongly embodying, the actor's own traits and his own impressions of the character. The archetypes, though, very much laid out by Rob, and the plot picks up with a rogue who basically goes out killing people for money, all presented very early on in a lot of the work that Rob Liefeld did, but then taking a really drastic turn in the film where he's subjected to a lot of torture to encourage his mutation to present itself, and then ultimately finding out that he has the mutant ability to self heal as he continues to romp along, destroying everything in his path as he seeks the return of his lady love, the one true kindred spirit he's ever found in his life, who suffered the same abuses as he's had throughout his upbringing and miserable existence, to put it mildly. The movie is known for breaking the fourth wall. It's known for its comedic traits, its over the top action, and its subtle cameos here and there. There's references to the X-Men. Colossus makes an appearance, and it's quite an enjoyable and thrilling action romp. If you haven't seen it before, go check out Deadpool, the film. But let's get to the heart of the topic. Who was the actual creator of the cinematic MCU Deadpool?
Yeah, so one of the ways we're going to get at that is we're going to talk about New Mutants number 98. This is an issue. Was the first appearance of Deadpool, Wade Wilson, and Domino, and in this in Mutants 98, this is an issue. It's written by Fabian Nicieza. It's illustrated by Rob Liefeld, and our understanding is that he had a big part to play in why we're seeing this particular turn in New Mutants in '98. We're seeing Deadpool being introduced as that mercenary killer figure. We're 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 seeing the humor, right? Although we're seeing a lot of humor throughout this issue, which I think we're going to explore to tease out is Deadpool a how distinct is he from this 1991 comic, or is he kind of standing alone already uh, as a sort of figure that we know and love from the 2010s films? And yeah, and also there's some neat stuff that happens with the it starts to kick off the transformation of the New Mutants into the X Force, which folks will appreciate too, and it's just fabulously illustrated and colored. It's it's really well put together. So it's Liefeld in his prime, in my opinion, and it's a really strong offering just on its own. But yeah, what did you guys think about this particular introduction to Deadpool in the comics? Does this feel like the same thing that we know from the movies?
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
Yes and no. But
Mhm.
to the no, I'd say I think I like this better. One thing that I think about Deadpool is I think he's they've kind of flanderized him essentially, which is this idea where you take one aspect of a character over time, he becomes more and more just that one facet. And
Yeah.
I actually kind of like what Rob's doing with him. You get more of a threat out of Deadpool here, and he definitely cracks some jokes. He's definitely not without humor. So the idea that humor got added in later to Deadpool is not true. Rob has him making quips and little jokes, and not taking the battle entirely too seriously. That's here from the first introduction. That's all here, and they just take that and they've amplified it to the point where current day Deadpool is the equivalent of a Rick and Morty sketch, or a Family Guy sketch. It's just nothing but a palaver of a pop culture stream of consciousness, and you can do a Merc with a mouth without him going into a Bendis level territory of just never ending word balloons that become word salad. And some of the weaknesses in the film, I think, actually come from both all the films. I think kind of come from leaning too heavily into that. Yeah. So I the parts where what I see from Rob's vision, I actually like a little bit more than where that character has ultimately been taken.
Yeah, like the main thing that stood out to me was, I mean, Cable's making quips, and taking the fight, uh, not lightly, but I mean, I feel like there's a similar level of humor that I think most of the characters are rising to, and in New Mutants '98, and that's what I enjoyed about it. I think when you do the Ryan Reynolds edition, almost everyone has to be a straight man to that character to play off so that he can be the
Z-
Flanders.
the zany one, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which actually kind of limits what you're able to do. Like the story world has to be, um, it has to be extreme, and everyone takes it seriously, so that he gets to be the one character who never takes anything seriously.
Well, I would actually add to that fact is that sometimes you end up characters in those films will still, and I'm talking broadly speaking, but if we just even focus on the first one, right? You have moments where characters, like his friend, who just
That's
talks
the
about,
one. Yeah, that's why I
yeah,
said almost. I was like,
right.
well, his roommate guy. I mean, yeah. There's some deadpan. I
But
guess you can do that. Yeah.
so you end up getting a little bit of like moments where characters will break into and sometimes it's the villains as well, and it's like now I've got characters who just kind of break into again the same sort of either stream of consciousness silliness, or just not taking things as seriously alongside of him, and the film starts to kind of lose a little bit of its stakes, in my opinion. But to focus again on the comic, there's this comic is quintessential 90s. When
Oh
people
yeah.
talk about 90s comics or 90s X-Men in particular, this is kind of what's being referenced. Rob kind of embodied the 90s, and when people have tried to recapture its magic and some of the lightning in the bottle aspects of it, they're usually talking about comics like this. And so even the original design of Deadpool, where you've got uh, just the characters with pouches and swords and some of the the cool tactical essentially look,
Mhm.
whether it's Cable or Deadpool, or with Gideon with his flowing hair in a quasi mohawk, I sort of haircuts that couldn't exist, these impossible haircuts that 90s comics all had on them. It's like I said, it's all on display in this particular issue.
I do think we could maybe assume a little bit about what the producers thought of who was the true contributor to the character that we know as Deadpool, because Rob actually makes a cameo in the film itself, and that was uncommon at the time. It was usually Stan Lee who was appearing in every single Marvel Studios production, as though he was the creator of all of Marvel. But in this one particular unique instance, you had a newer creator, Rob Liefeld, show up to make a cameo for the character that he first created. So there is an acknowledgement to his contribution in this first cinematic outing for the character. But I do agree that the version that's in the New Mutants '98 Definitely a darker tone, a lot more menacing, and the entire world is a lot more quippy. The one that's in the film, besides being zany, is cartoonish and cutesy to a very large degree. It's almost like a chibi version of Deadpool. So you see where the archetype of what Rob laid down is present to inspire the representation there, but they exaggerated it to such an nth degree. I don't know if it's unrecognizable, not quite there, but really pushing a boundary.
So can I make a quick confessional to Rob? So Rob, I want to reach out to you personally, and say that there is a journey that people have been on for a while on the internet. I know Rob's very familiar with this one. It started with a couple of blogs. I think it was called Progressive Boing or something, and it was a kind of a sort of like cracked, essentially. The articles were very satirical. They heavily satirized um, Rob's drawing. And specifically this issue, when I read this issue, I was like, I've seen this before I'd read this for our segment. And it's because a lot of the panels came directly from that blog. And they were, that blog was trying to just, take the piss and lampoon. And unfortunately, it got kind of, it started some virality essentially. And some of that virality, unfortunately, because of, earlier internet, turned into just kind of some ill-spirited bullying. And I think Rob got bullied at some conventions and got some unfortunate negative attention. And one thing I want to say is that initially I was introduced to Rob a little bit through some of that satire. And so I have been guilty myself of making a crack or two about Liefeld's feet, essentially, and which is something that the films have actually lightly touched upon here and there. So I know that there's a little bit of good-natured ribbing. One thing I will say, though, dear Rob, is that I have come around, and that people on the internet can come around to someone who just passionately loves the comic book art form.
Yeah.
And although, like said, Rob's anatomy is not like perfect, there's something about its expressive energy that never that people still try to emulate. And so it's okay in superhero comics to not have super precise anatomy. Like even Jack Kirby was playing certain things fast and loose to make things more cinematic. What I thought, the one thing that I thought was a little that stood out to me wasn't feet, actually. It's the fact that a couple characters I wasn't able to see as much of their eyes. So like Richter, for example, there's several characters where I didn't get to see much of their eyes as I thought would be as I expected. But there's definitely, these characters were fraught with extreme expressions, because this was a time post Claremont where Jim Lee and Liefeld and others were I think wanted to get out of the rut of taking the X-Men out for ice cream and going to the mall and shopping for clothes. And it was like, no, these characters are going to be at war. They're going to be doing some action oriented. We're going to take it back to just pure octane. And so, they loaded up on fuel and they lit a match. And so we actually kind of get that at the end of this issue as Cable just starts pouring through some of the members of X people that he has access to, and it's actually kind of funny as he filters some of them out. He filters out Skids as saying her power is worthless, which is funny because she's like Unis the Untouchable. She has like this invincible kind of force field, and it's like, nah, I can't use her. But because we need high octane characters on our team, and like I said, there is actually something very genuine about what is being done here. And even though there is some, I would say, some rough edges, and I think it's very fair to say there's rough edges in this. There's lots of rough edges in superhero comics, and so it's kind of I think it's unfortunate that Rob got singled out to be targeted for some of this online vitriol. And I think over time, I think he's turned into like a solid stand-up guy who is definitely not afraid of a controversy or afraid of a fight, but he seems genuinely loves the form. And we can't say that about all the people who have done superhero comics, people like Alan Moore, who seem to just piss on the genre every time they get a chance. And Rob seems to generally still love it. And so I gotta give respect to someone like that. So Rob, please unblock me on Twitter. I'm at Twitless Comics. I want to follow you. I want to boost you as you take on the man.
Yes,
And
thank you, Rob. Thank you, Warren, for listening to this
Yeah,
video and
and I've
listening to Twitless's appeal.
yeah, hear my confession and as my journey through, seeing that satire and ribbing along a little bit, but then like I said, coming to realize and even fall in love with some of the aspects of your work. So
It's brilliant stuff. I mean, I was so floored and thrilled by New Mutants '98, and it's actually kind of funny. I think that Deadpool, I think that Liefeld somehow was made, in well, not somehow, by probably by the particular mechanisms that you just outlined, Twitless, was made like the personal target of the old world that New World comics in the 2000s wanted to uh, get away from and revisit in order to have some sort of critical appeal against, and which had nothing to do with the success of those comics at that time, it, because they were selling in the millions, and so nobody had anything to say in '91 except that this was fantastic work. But funnily enough, I think that Deadpool is an example of. I think despite ourselves as a fandom of comics, I think we've found a way to maybe recapture '90s comics by reclaiming Deadpool in particular, this character, and bringing him back from the first movie was 2016, I think, from 2016 onward, and saying, "Yes, we can do '90s comics on the big screen in a way, like where we can just go extreme and fun and shock you, and have 2/3 of the movie be a fight scene and all kinds of jokes, and we can be gross and we can be ridiculous and we can just celebrate this medium, and we can just be flamboyant about the entire experience. We can do that, which is what Rob Liefeld is known for with his comics. We can do that with Deadpool, the character, where we somehow we decided, I don't, maybe there's just too much baggage or too much visibility on other characters, that legacy characters that survived the '90s, that we know from too many eras, maybe, so we couldn't actually invest that character with that kind of extremeness, but we could with Deadpool, which is very interesting. So in a way, despite what people have done to Liefeld, I think just the fact that Deadpool is kind of carrying, he's still kind of carrying uh, mainstream, comics, film, MCU storytelling on his shoulders mostly, is is a compliment to Liefeld, because Liefeld embodied, he introduced us to this character, he embodied the spirit of this character, and this character is still, uh, he's still surviving and thriving where most of the MCU is not doing so well. So I just find that perfectly fascinating.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think there's no question that Rob is the creator of the archetype for Deadpool. I think the only reason why this question even gets brought up in Rob's case is because of this lightning rod that I guess '90s have characters have become, but then also the '90 comic creators have been since then. There isn't the same level of reverence as like Stan Lee's creations or Siegel and Schuster for Superman, but nobody would ever question whatever interpretation on film you get of Superman, who was the creator of Superman. So it seems to be a more of a modern phenomenon, and just following in the trend of comics controversy that has been slowly and surely emerging. We've always had it, but it's pretty pronounced. And yeah, he's definitely, this archetype is now carrying the MCU forward. A lot of Deadpool and Wolverine was a bit of a revival for the MCU after it was lagging quite heavily, and thematically, it's probably going to be the direction that a lot of the movies go from here on forward. So there's a lot of credit to be given to the original revival of comics, the revival that Rob was a part of in the 90s, where they boosted sales, and he and a cadre of other creators established the first real independent means for creators to be able to take credit for their own work and to continue to own their own IPs rather than hand them off to a larger corporation, which was Image Comics, the founding that he and a number of other creators were responsible for doing, and that company still persists to this day. So it's a significant contribution to um, the uh, respect that the creators deserve and the giving them credit when they contribute something creatively to make sure that it's never uh, wrestled out of their hands anytime in the future. So, with that, we do have a statement that we were asked to read. I had a bit of an interaction with Rob on X, and he wanted us for this video to make one thing abundantly clear, for any of the audience that is checking this out and getting a bit of the backstory on the emergence and the evolution and the development of the cinematic Deadpool, something that we're going to explore further in a part 2 of this video when we look at Joe Kelly's contribution to that character's representation on film, but definitely not calling into question Rob's original creation of the character. So, with that, Matt C., would you like to read Rob's comment?
Yeah, Rob says, "Love Joe Kelly. The fourth wall is all him, but not his name, powers, origin, humor, and certainly not the impact. Politely state in this video that Deadpool's initial appearance over the first few years sold in the millions. By 1999, Wizard was campaigning to save Deadpool from cancellation. Historic."
Hmm. Historic facts that aren't properly reflected in spin, and that that's all
Sorry.
very true. That's all that's all very true. People forget exactly how Deadpool entered into the zeitgeist and the reason why there's even a Deadpool film in existence today. It wasn't something that was dug out of obscurity. It was a phenomenon when Rob was working on the title, and that's the reason why it's stuck in people's minds.
So, concluding thoughts. Well read. Film and comic. What are your thoughts on?
Film is a fun romp. I think the villain is very forgettable. It's a little bit strange that they decided to go with like such a muted antagonist for Deadpool's first outing. Deadpool's character is very well established. I think by this first film, you get a bit of a backstory of who he was before he got his powers. He has a love interest, and then who he becomes after the arc that he has to go through and suffering to grow into the hero or the anti-hero, whatever he is exactly. We don't know. Big clown, the clownish hero that we get in the current manifestation. So it's a very good vehicle for the character. The film itself is just kind of mid in terms of its plot. But a lot of the impact is delivered by Tim Miller's directing and breaking the fourth wall, slow motion shots, some good action sequences. Those attributes really deliver on a lot of the impact of the original Deadpool outing. The comic, of course, is monumental in comic history. It really was a significant achievement in the 90s in terms of sales, in terms of impact, in terms of hype. The New Mutants eventually wrapped up and spawned X Force, which Rob also helmed, and the sales for that were phenomenal. That led to a lot of the celebrity that Rob enjoyed early in his career. He was taking photos with NWA, and it all started here. So there is absolutely no question how significant New Mutants 98 was to the era of comics in the early 90s.
Matt C.
Yeah, it's funny, the fourth wall thing, that seems, if I remember right, 2016, like, that seemed to be what people talked about as much as anything, but I don't think that's what keeps butts in seats, you know? I think that there's a lot more. It's humor, but there's a lot more to the character. Ryan Reynolds is bringing a lot himself, but uh, the core elements. I don't think you have the core elements of the fourth wall being broken. I think you have the core elements here in New Mutants 98. And on top of that, you can build into kind of more extreme directions that he eventually gets taken. And I just think it's fascinating that popular culture, as much as it derides 90s comics, it betrays itself. It doesn't actually believe it because there is something that they want. They want to find. We found a way to celebrate 90s comics in Deadpool, and I think it's fun that Liefeld, uh, you know, brought him to the scene, put him before us with New Mutants 98. So he's responsible for that, and he's responsible for the continued uh, enjoyment that we have of him now on the big screen, which I think is fun.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.